I mean, look, I don't know what I can really say about the Jason Statham versus a Geek Massive Shark movie that you don't get from the basic pitch of it's Jason Statham versus a Geek Massive Shark. This is a by-the-numbers action flick with, to its credit, a little bit more bang for your buck and polish than they probably need to give it for what it is, but at the end of the day, it is still the big boy shark movie. If you're expecting anything more than that, I don't know what to tell you. Jaws this sure ain't. To talk about the positives, I will say this has a far more enjoyable hook than need be. The plot could have just been, yeah, that shark is proper big, and I honestly don't think anybody would have batted an eyelid or went, psh, well that's unbelievable, but they actually managed to craft some compelling narrative around how this big beefy bastard comes about. The premise of the movie starts with a prologue of Jason Statham on a deep-sea rescue mission at a depth never achieved before, which goes wrong when a mysterious and unseen large entity attacks the vessel he is trying to rescue survivors from and forces him to abandon a few crew members to their deaths in order to save the others. Skip forward a few years and a large scientific research team, led by famous Chinese actress Li Bingbing, because our ridiculously rugged and handsome action star needs a ridiculously attractive female love interest, and why not have one that'll help get that world's second largest movie market money, am I right boys? Are attempting to dive to the seafloor on the theory that what we think is the seafloor is actually a wall of gases that with the right submarine equipment can be penetrated through to cover depths unknown, and when they go down they accidentally release the Meg. Now, I might be biased on this because here's a weird tangent you probably didn't know about me. I am fascinated by the ocean, so I think this is a really decent hook. Sure, it's a techno-babbly sci-fi oversimplification of bigger ideas and all this high-concept stuff is quickly brushed to the side in favour of "Grr, big boy McChewy is gonna eat your face off." But I do feel like the reality-based concept of we don't know jack shit about the ocean is a massively underexplored theme for horror. I mean, besides Lovecraftian stories like The Call of Cthulhu, James Cameron's The Abyss, and now this movie, I've actually seen very few narratives use this premise. And seriously, the ocean is fucking amazing and terrifying. We actually know far more about the surface of every planet in the solar system than we do about our own seas. About 95% of it is unexplored and it's fucking full of mysteries. I mean, for example, have you ever heard of the bloop? In 1997, scientists observed the loudest underwater sound ever recorded with hydrophones over 5,000 kilometers apart, all picking up the same minute-long wail at the time thought to be animal in origin. To put that into perspective, a blue whale, which is the loudest underwater mammal we know of, can only be heard 800 kilometers away from its source. Now, granted, the spoiled sports did their science and spoiled the mystery of that over 10 years later when they declared that the sound was just an icequake and not a deep sea giant that will one day rise from its slumber and turn insane everyone who lays eyes upon it as it destroys the globe in a fiery oppressive rule. But still, before the mystery was solved, that's some compelling ass shit, right? And it's not like the sea isn't riddled with other crazy shit that makes for intriguing narrative premises. Hydrophones pick up weird noises all the time, and not every one of them gets explained. In 1968, 4 submarines all mysteriously disappeared. We discover new species we never knew existed in its depth almost daily. A recently discovered ocean zone was found to be home to 100 new species alone. So, the point of this tangent is that the ocean is fucking cool, and I respect the film's efforts in what should be a straightforward action flick to give this idea some time and exploration. In fact, the initial moment where the characters dive through the gas to the depths unknown and are greeted by the visual of a beautiful watery jungle teeming with undiscovered life forms, I found to be a genuinely great cinematic moment that perfectly captured the romantic and dangerous magic of uncharted depths that drives me to be so fascinated by this subject matter in the first place. Also, as far as CG goes, it was actually super pretty. It sort of reminded me of the unbelievably incredible bathysphere dive from the first Bioshock game. I mean, it wasn't anywhere near in the same ballpark as that brilliant bit of storytelling, but the comparison is definitely there. This mysterious tone even helped build into the tension of the flick. For a film that should have been as subtle as a brick in the face, I expected them to be throwing giant sharks at me before the opening credits even hit. And while the threat is present from the word go, the movie actually takes a surprisingly good deal of time before showing the big bugger, choosing to spend the first act teasing its arrival with lots of looking out into the invisible darkness of the ocean and having the submarines the characters occupy get knocked around by a veiled and hidden attacker. This does require some suspension of disbelief, like how in the hell do they go so long without managing to see it when it is literally 90 feet long, but fuck it, whatever, I can roll with that. It's a shame then that once the evil fish does rear its intimidating head at around the 25-minute mark, it starts to kick about so much you'd think it was trying to pose for a family photo. To compare it to Jaws, Spielberg actually talks in a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff, such as this interview from the film The Cutting Edge, which is really worth watching and exists in full on YouTube, check it out, about how important it was to not show the shark.
We had a contest where Verna would stop the moviola on a frame where she wanted to make the cut, and I would stop it where I wanted to make the cut. And if ever we stopped it on the same frame that had already been marked with a grease pencil X, we knew that was the right frame on certain things where we didn't agree. And all of our disagreements always happen with that darn shark. Verna was always in favor of making less to be more, and I was trying to squeeze that one more, because it took me days to get the one shot. So I'm going back to, I'm on a barge for 2 days trying to get the shark to look real. And the sad fact was the shark would only look real in 36 frames, not 38 frames. And that 2-frame difference was the difference between something really scary and something that looked like a great white floating turd.
The Meg proves Spielberg's point, as the more the shark appears on screen, the less intimidating and more obvious the CG becomes. With one side shot in particular of Jason face to face with the computer-generated foe lingering so long it starts to feel a bit like PS2 graphics. Fortunately, it's still entertaining enough that it'll hold your attention. Nothing to shout home about, of course, but when it does descend into big dumb fun, it's dumb enough and fun enough that you don't regret your afternoon's purchase. The heroes are perfectly likeable, often doing selfless acts for each other that gives you reason enough to cheer them on. They don't have much character to grip onto, but they're perfectly servable avatars that you can root for, and they drive the plot well enough. It's just a shame they don't have a bit more substance. Jason Statham's character in particularly gets shafted with this, as they tease a whole survivor's guilt angle with him being terrified of the water due to the prologue events of the film, but besides a brief moment where he pauses in concern before diving into the ocean, this goes absolutely nowhere, and from that point onwards he seems to have literally no issues or guilt at all, jumping into the water over literally any excuse. What's that? We need to GPS tag the shark? I'll do it! No, nobody else. Me! Once the PTSD-esque stuff is dropped, he becomes eerily calm in literally any given situation. It makes him feel almost weirdly detached from the events of the film. There's no nervousness or urgency as he swims unprotected towards a creature that could literally swallow him whole. He instead chooses to make a Finding Nemo joke. Now look, I know Jason Statham is the kind of action hero star that you expect to see be ruthlessly unemotional in films with names like, I don't know, Half Past Dead 2, It's Kill O'Clock. But would it really wreck them to have him show a little bit of apprehension? I mean, especially after teasing that to be a core aspect of his character, to not deliver on that feels just odd. That's actually a problem with everyone in this movie. People are pretty calm throughout this whole flick, all things considered. When someone dies, they'll have their sad moment, but then the very next scene they'll be cracking one-liners. When a boat flips, leaving them all stranded in the middle of the ocean, we get an exchange where the black comic relief character jokes about racism with the nearest dude. Well, just off frame, we can assume there are people literally drowning. But, sorry, evidently the film's here for a good time more so than a scary one. And I guess on that level it succeeds, as the middle act has a couple of fun sequences, including a moment inspired by actual GoPro footage where Jason dives under to reveal the shark right next to him, which is an enjoyable little sequence, and the final act builds to the kind of batshit insanity with a genuinely satisfying ending fight that sees some nonsensical Shadow of the Colossus style shit that is as bunk as an off the wall as it is a good time. The film's a crowd pleaser and it knows it. There's a minor subplot with a small dog, for example, I won't spoil, that really shows this. It's just a shame that instead of choosing to keep the film at the tension-building horror tone of the opening act, or the ridiculously over-the-top silliness of the closing act, it mostly opts to play it safe with some inoffensive PG-13 paint-by-the-numbers shark attack shtick. Had it been either a little more slow and deliberate, or a little more flashy and dumb, it could have actually been something pretty memorable. As it stands, however, it's solid but inconsequential. I'd say go see it, but just know that besides a tiny few select sequences, you're getting exactly what you'd expect. A B-movie story with an A-movie budget. Also, the bloop was not nice, Cave. Spread the word, tell your friends. They don't want you to find out, but I know the message must get